Interesting. Interesting. You have the mouse in. Interestingly enough, how I've seen that show up before is prior to KW, as you guys know, KW is the largest real estate firm on the planet. We've been #1 for many years in a row. How that's shown up for me is Coldwell Banker was #1 at one point, then Century 21 was #1, then Remax was #1, then it was Coldwell Banker again. And the whole time, Keller Williams was trying to figure out how to be #1, and Gary Keller just like dove in and said, let's just focus on our culture and our people. And he just poured into the people. And soon enough, what happened was not only were we #1, we never left that pedestal. And that shows up to me because that's the formula for that, God, family, and business. And really what that means is take care of yourself, make sure that you're okay, take care of your family, and the business part of it should come after that. So interestingly enough, we were the only real estate company that's been #1 for the length of time that we have. And I think it's because of this kind of stuff, is our model and our culture. These are more of our values. By the way, you guys have seen this before, yeah? Many times before. That third one down, customers always come first. You guys know who the customers are? Who's the customers? I asked this because someone asked me this, and it was a whole dialogue, and it was kind of an interesting thing. So when we say customers always come first, who's the customers? You guys are thinking something. Maybe it is. Who's the customers? Steph, who's the customers?
I'm going to say clients, but...
You're the customers.
Yeah, okay.
Agents. Like you come first. Like Keller Williams' model is agent-centric. So that not clients, not the buyers or sellers, but you're our customers. So everything that we do at KW in terms of service and training and support and all that kind of stuff is for your benefit. I'm going to go and skip a couple of things. These are all people who recently joined our firm. Some of them are mega agents and high producing agents. So if you see them around, welcome them. Here's some numbers compared to last month and last year. If you're interested in knowing that, we can also send out something we call a LOR, which stands for Language of Real Estate. There's us compared to the region. Actually, oddly enough, compared to other islands and compared to the region, we're far ahead. So what's new in our market center? Copley office is open. Yay, Molly. Molly did it. So it's open. There's still some design stuff that we're trying to work out. But all in all, internet's up, electric's up, offices are built out, people are working out of there. It's a phenomenal office space. It's probably, right, Molly, about double the size of the last one. We have 2 conference rooms in this one. It's going to be, when it's completely done, it's going to be awesome. And Molly's favorite part, we have a bathroom in the office. Oh, yeah. Have you guys been to the whole office? Yeah. You had to walk, you had to kind of like schlep over across the parking lot. It was a little bit of a dangerous trek, but we made a stand and we have a bathroom that's actually in the office now, which is great, and a kitchen. Shift series in the market center, that's a lunch and learn. That starts tomorrow. Not starts tomorrow, I started it, but it's going to be continuing tomorrow with Adrian and Tilio. I think they're going to teach the next 2. It's going to be every other week. We also have the HAR is teaching one. I think Russ is teaching one as well, and then I'll close it out. Mega Camp is in August. If anyone is planning to attend in person, you got to get your tickets soon. There's a digital option that you can jump onto. It's not Zoom. They built their own platform for it. It's phenomenal. To schedule one-on-one coaching with leadership, I just put that on there because a lot of times people don't know who to talk to for what reason. So for me, anything to do, well, really anything, coaching, team building, production, anything like that, compliance. Nicole Burns is our head of productivity. So if you're interested, if you're in the coaching program now, that's the person to talk to. If you're interested in getting additional coaching, that's the person to talk to as well. You can see Chrissy for any kind of thing with P&L if you need training on that, or your DAs if you have questions. If you need help with GE, General Excise Tax. Kerry, who's in the back of the room, he can help you with anything tech related. So Command, your database, Facebook, how Facebook integrates with Command. Fun fact for you guys, if you guys don't know, KW is really a tech-driven company, a tech company that supports real estate agents. And we are the only real estate company that is an exclusive partnership with Facebook, Instagram, Google, Nextdoor, Yelp, just to name a few. So that's a huge thing to say because there's other real estate companies out there. We are the only one that they're in partnership with, which is a phenomenal thing. We also have property management and concierge services. So Here's a slide for the shift class tomorrow. They're going to be going over tactics 3 and 4, do more with less and find the motivated. Property management, we just opened up this division. Do you guys know that we have property management?
No.
We have property management. So here's what this means and here's why it's different. So you can't do property management and do sales at the same time. Two different things altogether. Our property management is under a different license. And the purpose of that is to keep the E&O insurance, low at a minimum. So we created a property management division that will pay you a referral fee. There's no property management company out there that does, and more importantly, they're going to keep track of your client for you. So I've done this before. I know Christine's done this before. We'll send something over to a property manager, and it's like 50-50 whether you get that thing back or not if they want to buy or sell in the future, right? And they don't pay a referral fee to begin with. So not only do they pay a referral fee, you'll get it back, and we also do a bunch of marketing to make sure that you're top of mind to them. So let's say, for instance, Fran, you sent an owner to manage one of his investment properties. We'll send marketing with your name and information on it. So if that owner ever decides to buy or sell in the future, they're going to call you. And then the property manager kicks it back over to you if they want to sell that property that's in the property management pool. The person who's running it for us, her name is Jody. Jody's phenomenal. She has tons of experience. She used to manage 450 doors. Can you believe it? Like just by herself, which is just phenomenal. So she's very experienced and well equipped. We also have something called concierge services that we recently created for your benefit. And what that looks like is if you need the pre-listing packet or listing presentation and all those other paperwork and contracts and so forth prepared for you, we can do that for you. The caveat is you got to be out of coaching. So if you're in the PC program, finish your coaching first before you utilize that. The reason why was we want to make sure we empower you. We don't want to take away or handicap you from learning the things that you should know. In addition, there's a contract writing. This one's hugely used and hugely beneficial. Here's an example of how that's been working in real time. Is when we first launched it, we were kind of beta testing with a mega agent. And that mega agent was showing 6 or 7 properties. And of the 6 or 7 properties, they were showing all day long, because those things take a long time, like all day to show. When they got to the very end, the client was like, okay, I want you to write an offer on this one, like 4 or 5 offers. And she goes, yep, no problem at all. So she's talking to him, and he goes, hey, I don't want to be rude, but shouldn't you leave to go back to your office so you can write the contracts? And she goes, oh, it's already written. It's in your DocuSign ready to go. And he's like, you didn't even leave. Like you didn't even, she goes, oh, my team took care of it. So that's how that shows up and why that could be hugely beneficial. So you don't have to be stuck in front of a computer spending 3 or 4 hours depending on how many contracts you write. So we can do that for you. And we only charge you for the ones that go into escrow. So if we've written 10 offers for you and 1 went into escrow, you're only paying the 1 that went into escrow. On the listing side, it's $50 for the one that you get accepted. So when the one that goes live or active on an MLS. So those 2 services are available now if you guys want to take advantage of it. Today we're going to talk about take charge of your listings or some strategies and some practical uses. Kara, can you check this?
Oh, it was a big yes with like 5 exclamation points when you talked about the concierge.
Awesome. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is to better prepare for a listing. So some of it is going to be like technical stuff, what to fill out, what information to use, where to go for some of your sourcing. But some of it's going to be some strategies on how to sell your property. Exclusive listing agreement and the necessary documents, some of the strategies on pre-listing packets, MLS, showing time, etc., and a bunch of resources. Here's what I would say before we start and go delve too deep is, guys, we're in a shifting market. I'm sure you guys can feel that. So for some of those people that have been doing this for a while and have something to compare to, right? Some of the signs of a shifting market is, especially when you have a listing, if we're analyzing from a listing perspective, is things sit on the market a little bit longer. You might have to have the conversation of a price reduction, which is like, who's had a conversation about a price reduction in the last 2 years? That's like rare, right? So these kind of things, and it's okay. It's normal. The sky's not falling. It is what it is, but there's a strategy in place for it. One of the things Gary Keller just said recently, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, is he said, there's a lot of bad agents that were just in a good market. And what that means simply is, if you just plan on putting a sign out front and putting it on the MLS and you're like, okay, I'm done. Oh, that was hard work. That was a day's work. And your property is going to sell and you've done what you can. You did your very best for the client to sell the property. You completely missed huge opportunities. Not only are we need to, in this shifting market, not only do you need to find, like you need to go find the buyer. So one of the things that you got to start off with is identifying the buyer. Is it going to be the same buyer? If you have a property that you're listing, a single family home in Kahala for $3 million, or brand new construction in Hawakale, or a condo in Waianae, that's not the same buyer. That's 3 entirely different buyers. So you shouldn't market it the same. In a hot market, in a seller's market like we came out of, putting a sign out front and putting it on the MLS might actually get you that buyer. It might get you competing offers, and that's okay. But when the market shifts, you can't expect to do that thing and move it as quickly as you can. Get competing offers if at all possible. And more importantly, you know, the thing that Hawaii does not allow for, that some parts of the mainland does allow for, which is billboards, right? We don't have billboards anywhere, which is good. We don't need to have billboards in Hawaii, but having your listing is a billboard. You're cheating the system. So if you have a listing and that listing is going to be yours for, let's say Molly gets a new listing, and even if she gets an offer within 10 days, it's going to be a 45-day escrow. She's going to have that thing out in front of the yard for 60 days. That is a marketing platform. And if you're not recognizing that or using it as a marketing platform and using it as a billboard, you're completely missing the opportunity that you have. Because once that listing goes away, it's like, gosh, what else am I going to do? What should I spend money on? Should I do postcards? Should I market the listing? You already had the listing. You had a sign out front. You could have done open houses, and we'll get into the open house part of it in more detail. But I think the last number I looked at was like less than 1% of buyers purchase the property from an open house, from actually going to the open house. So a lot of agents kind of resign to, yeah, open house is just, it's kind of boring. How long is the preparation and the whole open house by your interaction? How many hours do you spend on an open house roughly? What do you guys say?
The whole day.
The whole day. Okay, so you're saying the whole day. So not the 3 hours, not the 2 to 5, right? But the whole day. Okay. Any other answers? How many hours spent on an open house?
We didn't have to this last year because people just came. But
Yeah, that's true.
you should be trying to call neighbors or, you know, get people, like start marketing the week before to try and get people in there. And yeah.
That is absolutely the right answer. I would say that it takes a week or more to get to the open house. If you're doing it the right way, if you're doing all those tools and what have you, those tools are circle prospecting and doing some door knocking and inviting the neighbors to it. And there's all kinds of things so that when you finally get to the open house, you guys ever walk in an open house that's another agent's listing and they're just kind of sitting there on their phone like, oh, hey, welcome. And they're on their computer or their phone. They're not doing anything at all. Like that kills me, because if you did the right things a week prior, they're going to be busy. They're going to be busy entertaining the neighbors or talking to other owners or trying to get other listings. Like that's the real purpose of an open house, is to get additional clients. One of the things that the MREA, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Book, states is with every listing that you have, you should get at least another 3 to 4 pieces of business, buyers and sellers. So if you have a listing and you close that listing and you're a normal non-KW agent, you might easily go, I did it, okay, I sold a listing. But not really. I mean, you want to sell a listing, that's part of it, but did you get another 3 or 4 pieces of business as a result of it too? If the answer is no, then there's a huge opportunity missed.
Before you move on, Chad, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. There was a question in the chat about who's best to contact, going back to the concierge service. Is it email you directly? Is there email?
There is an email. I forgot the email. Just contact me first, because I do want to chat with whomever is interested in that service. I want to find out, are you still in coaching? What kind of help you need specifically? By the way, we also have, for those agents who are really productive and really busy, we also have VA services that can help you too. So that's $8 an hour. And here's the benefit. You can go find and train and hire your own assistant, which, how much does an assistant go for now? Like 20 bucks an hour or whatever. You can hire, train, and find your own VA. Or you can just, if it's a project-based thing, you're just like, hey, I just need someone to tag my database or create smart plans or send out emails or confirm my appointments or whatever that thing is. That might be a set amount of hours per day or per week. We can do that for you. And all of our VAs are trained in our command database and everything else. So it's super, super easy. That's something that you and I were talking about too before. So Things to know, exempted listings, not a pocket listing. Never use that term. If you've heard that term before, pretend that you've never heard about it, throw it away. Be careful not to violate NAR's clear cooperation rules. So pocket listing, traditionally speaking, is, so we're talking about listings in general, is one where someone will take the listing and not put it on the MLS with the intention to go find a buyer. So is that allowed? Can you do that? Anyone?
Yeah, no. You're supposed to already have the buyer if you're going to do a true off-market listing.
So
which I did.
This gets into kind of the philosophy of it a little bit. Is the answer, NAR's issue is clear cooperation, which is a huge important rule. Making sure that if we have a listing that we're cooperating fairly with the market, because the market sets the tone for everything, right? And other agents, so we're cooperating with other agents. But what if a seller says, hey, Steph, I want you to market my property, but I hate the neighbors and I want to sell my property first because this guy is, dog poops on my lawn all the time and I just got to get rid of this guy and I can't take this guy. I don't want you to put on MLS, don't market it, but I want you to take my listing. Well, is that okay?
I mean, you gave me the right verbiage to make it okay. But I think when it comes back down to the board of realtors, we are serving the clients and they are okay with serving the clients as long as we have the proper verbiage in this agreement, right?
Yeah, so know that the board, they want every single listing because the board is a for-profit organization, right? And we owe a little bit of due diligence to the board to make sure we follow the rules because we're members of the board. What they want is every single listing on there because it makes their information more tangible. It makes it more valuable. So if there's half of the information that's on there, it does the board looks bad. So they want everything on there. So what we've done is we've created something called an exempted listing. So in those rare circumstances, there is a form for exempted listings, which basically it's a kind of a seller beware. It's like, hey seller, we know that you don't want it on the MLS and you may or may not want to sign out front, but just know that we may not get the true test of the market because it's not fully exposed as it otherwise would be if we had it on all these different websites and assign whatever the case is. So there are circumstances where you might need to do an exempted listing. Ask your broker, ask me if you have questions about that. Number two is in the shifting market, KW is not a discount brokerage. I get that asked all the time. Hey, can I do this listing for $500? No, absolutely not. Please don't do that. We offer a lot of value. We're a full service brokerage. We have so many tools and resources. We have a legal team, a legal department. We have really experienced brokers. We're not a discount brokerage. And here's the other thing too. The biggest liability is not necessarily with the buy side, it's with the sell side. So if you're on the sell side and you're like, I'm just going to do it for 1% or less, we don't do that anyway, so don't get any funny ideas. But let's say you renew it for like 1% and something went sideways, that's not even enough money to help defend ourselves if we had to go to court or hire an attorney, and it's a whole thing. So think of it like a business perspective. If there's a huge liability in doing listings, why would you want to short yourself on what we could earn on a listing? Number three, MLS will impose a fine if you don't input the data based on a 4, a 10, or an amendment to the listing agreement. So what that's referring to specifically is dates. Everyone kind of gets a funny idea about the actual date. Like when is a listing agreement fully executed? Is it when the seller signs it? Is it when the broker signs it? Is it the date on A4? Is it information in A10 or is it an amendment? And the answer is it's not, it's kind of all of them, but it starts in order. So it goes with A4. So let's pretend for a moment that, what's today's date, the 19th? Mm-hmm. So let's say that I have a listing agreement. The buyer or the seller signed it, my broker signed it, and it's fully executed as of last month now. And there's a 4-day rule with MLS, right? So if you don't input it within 4 days, you get penalized. So there's this thing that you have to balance. So if I have it fully executed last month, a month ago, 30 days ago, how do I define this? Well, if this A4 says July 19th, I'm okay. Because I executed, which means that the seller is bound to me. Like they're in a contract with me, but I don't have to put it onto the MLS yet. I don't have to go live yet because if it says the 19th, I have 4 days from the 19th before I get a fine or a violation. Or, so let's say that A4 says 30 days ago. That contract was executed 30 days ago, and A4 says 30 days ago. But A10 says Otherwise, if the seller notifies me in writing, blah, 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 it has some language in there that would otherwise redefine that date. Then it means it's whatever shows up in the E10 or by an amendment. But if you don't want to be fined, any one of those three things has to come down to within 4 days. 4 days of being inputted to the MLS. If you started an incoming file, by the way, on the MLS, make sure that when you go live, that your date is correct, because I have a lot of people that will start that incoming file 30 days ago. Have you done that before? I'm getting a lot of looks and smirks and people shaking
I've
their
had
head.
to scramble like when doing a coming soon, and then I accidentally put, the listing date. Now I just never put a listing date. Don't put the listing date until you're gonna go active.
Yeah,
Because
that's
never, and then you won't screw up.
Because just so you know, there's a lot of things that I can go back in for you and change as a broker, but the date I can't. Like you have to call MLS to do that. And when you call MLS, what are they going to say?
Change.
Yeah, no problem at all. No, or they're going to say, send me your entire listing agreement. And then they're going to go, oh, I was looking at this. There's so many violations on here. Like, oh no, I owe you money now. So make sure you have that information right. Oh, okay.
Hey, Chad.
Yes, sir.
Clarification. So
Yes, sir.
A4 is the price. Do you mean A5?
Yes, sorry. Thank you, counselor. A5.
I just want to make sure I wasn't missing something. Sorry.
You're 100% correct. Thank you for catching that. Are you going to drive? Maybe?
I was trying to get that admin, so then there you go, check.
Take notes. By the way, guys, you should be taking, when you do a buyer consultation, listing presentation, or whatever it is, you should be taking notes. I used to take diligent notes, and even when I showed property, I would have the client information on the MLS on one side, and I would have a custom kind of form on the other side that would be the questions that the buyer is asking me, the pros and cons of the property, all these other kind of things. I would take notes and I would scan it back to them so I could have a follow-up on action items, what to do later. You have to be taking notes, and actually it's a RICO violation if you don't, believe it or not. Next slide, please.
I think you can drive now. I think you're right.
Oh,
Areas.
okay. I'm gonna fly through this thing because there's so many slides. I don't want to put anyone to sleep, especially Robert. He's gonna catch me off guard. I know it. Okay, so before going to a listing appointment, here's some of the things that you should have prepared. You want to, before you go to the appointment, by the way, you should have MLS data. So pull up the property. Even if they say I haven't listed it before, do a complete search and kind of a bare search. Like you don't want to be too detailed in terms of unit number or what have you, because it can come up differently on the sequence of it. So you might want to just search the numeric portion and kind of drive it down. The reason you want to do that is you want to see when it was listed, with who. I mean, would you consider going, I mean, maybe some of you might, but I would redefine how I approach and how I strategize for that listing appointment if I'm meeting with a seller who has had it on and off the market for the last 5 years with like 7 different real estate agents. You know what I mean? I would be like, oh, I don't even know if I want to take this listing, or if I do, I'm definitely not doing it for a discount rate or whatever the case is. But also you can see the previous condition. So if it's been listed as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and suddenly when you call him and make the appointment, he's like, yeah, it's a 4-bedroom. What do you ask? Is it permitted? Do you have plans? Do you use a contractor? Are they licensed? Like there's other questions that would come up. And we're required by our license to make sure that we ask these things and do some of these research items. You're going to have the Hawaii Information Service or Realist. We have both. So you have Realist with your MLS membership. Hawaii Information Service is something that we subscribe to, that we send out the username and password to. It's just same information roughly, but 2 different platforms to access it. They're really, really helpful information. Honolulu Tax Assessor, or if you're on one of our other islands or whatever, the tax assessor is there. And the reason for that is sometimes information doesn't jive. Like sometimes it'll show up on one and it's a little bit different. So it allows you to find out, to get some clarity when you actually meet with a seller. Ahead of time, if at all possible, there's some of you, like Steph was mentioning the other day, that sometimes she sets an appointment the day before. So there's not enough time to order the prelim, but you can still get some of the paperwork started. If you do have enough time though, order the prelim, because you want to see what's on it. Like, what do they owe? Are they behind on something? Is there a list pendants, which is a a lawsuit or a foreclosure file. Like all these other things are super important. Is it in trust? What if you're talking to a John Smith and then you look and it's like a Johnson family trust that shows up on title? Like those are questions that are super important. And some agents are so anxious to get the listing, they just kind of sign whatever, but it's not even valid. Like you can't even do anything with it if you don't do some of the research. If possible, order a net sheet. Some of you new agents, what a net sheet is you're gonna, I mean, there's programs that you can kind of do it yourself. I would always recommend, and I have some examples I'll show you, but I would always recommend having escrow do it. And here's what I typically do. I usually pick 3 different prices of what I think it could sell for. You know, if I pull comps and it's like around 800, I might do one at 820, 800, and maybe the low ball one at like 775 or something. And I have them prepare that. I include my commissions, all the closing costs, the whole thing. And that way I can provide them like, if we sell it for this, this is what you can expect to net. If we sell it for this, this is what you can expect to net, and so forth. Really, really helpful because it adds clarity and the proper expectation. The other thing that net sheet is super helpful for is if you're dealing with someone who said, I'm not really sure if I want to sell it. I'm thinking sell, maybe rent. What you want to do is do the same net sheet process, but throw in HARPTA in there. If in fact, if they are someone who's going to be vacating the island, like they're not going to be a Hawaii resident. That's super helpful, especially for like military, because it changes everything. Like when they go, oh my gosh, I got to pay this one. The HARPTA fees alone is going to far exceed all the commissions and closing costs and all that kind of stuff together. So it gives them a realistic idea of if I go down this path of using this property as an investment property, I could be, you know, paying a lot of money in fees. Then the listing presentation, there's a ton of great resources that come in on how to build that out. Include things like testimonial, your marketing plan, some photos, all that kind of stuff, and comps. One thing that funny, I put it on the bottom there. One thing that I used to always send out, and I don't see a lot of people doing it now, is a pre-listing packet. The pre-listing packet, the reason why that shows up successful is because let's say that you made an appointment and it's a week from now. In that course of the week, you have no idea. If it's your friend or family member, that's one thing. But if it's just a lead or referral or whatever it is, you don't know if that person is talking to other agents. You have to assume that they are. So in that course of a week, their friend at work could have been like, oh, don't go with such and such. Harry, you got to use my guy. Or the family member's like, oh, you know my cousin John who flips burgers right now. But anyways, cousin John, he's got his real estate license. You should list it with him. Like all these people are kind of giving their 2 cents as who they should use for real estate or for their real estate needs. Having a pre-listing packet ensures that they're going to use you because you're sending it in advance. It's full color. They receive it. And now they feel a little bit more obligated. Like, oh, I got to give this person a chance before I kind of move on. Because I've done this before where I've shown up for a listing or called to verify, hey, listing presentation for tomorrow, we're still on. Oh, you know what? Thank you so much for calling me. I decided I'm going to go with such and such. I'm like, I didn't get a chance. I didn't even get a chance to compete. That pre-listing packet certainly helps for that. So keep that in mind.
We do chat at the market center. We do have a couple binding options. So we're ordering more hardcover. A couple of you guys have probably used it already, but getting in touch with Tyler. We have right now, we have this nice soft cover, local Kevin Williams foil stamped, right? And then basically all it is printing out your color, and then we can bind it for you. Give us like 24 hours.
We also have the luxury hard copy ones too. So that if you have a luxury listing, that's
like 15, 20 bucks.
Listing presentation. Before going to listing, make sure that you have some of these things. You're going to pull the data from the previous MLS. I kind of have a snapshot of what that looks like. So as an example, I didn't put unit numbers. I didn't put anything else. You just want to put sold. You remove the search criteria because you want to see everything. You don't want to, if it's defaulted, it's going to go, I think it's 180 days. You want to remove that 180 days so it searches everything all together. And then you click on the results and it'll show up. So in this case, 3 popped up and those 3 are all the same property, but I get to see it in order. I get to see like when it was first listed, when it was listed after that, how much it sold for in each time. I can kind of see the nuance of the property, if there's any improvements that have been made throughout that time. Again, that's just me doing forensic type of analysis when I'm looking at stuff. So next one is Realist, or in this case, we're going to look at Realist, sorry, Hawaii Information Service or Realist. Realist is on the dashboard when you log in. So what does this look like? this is what realist looks like when it pops up. You would put that address there. It'll pop up on the bottom. It'll put a little pin in the map. And so why is realist important? It shows you who the owner is. It shows you flood zone information. By the way, can I just say one thing? Because I see it's happening a lot. Don't copy previous MLS information. Like don't copy that over, because it's garbage in, garbage out. So if it's another agent that's not you, and they just thought that the flood zone was whatever it is, and it's not that, now you just copied over wrong information, and we could be liable for that. Same goes for all the other data. So do your own research. This is why looking this up on Realist is super important. TMK, legal description, tax assessment information. And then if you click on that, there's links to the tax records. So you can get to the tax side just by clicking here. And that's what it looks like. So you click on that, it opens up on the tax assessor. On the bottom there, it has all the information on the property itself. If you notice here too, people always ask me this question, like the total property exemption, that's where it shows up. It shows up right second to the right column there. And interestingly, when you compare, by the way, assessed value is not market value. You guys know that already, right? Assessed value is just the value that the assessor deems it for sake of property tax purposes. But in a hot market, tax assessed value typically trails market value by anywhere between 8 and 15% in a hot market. And then that gap starts to shrink a little bit as the market neutralizes or becomes more balanced. It's funny enough is in California, during the last mortgage meltdown, it flip-flops. Everyone's calling the assessor every single year, like, you're overcharging me. Like it says here, it's my home value is 800,000 and this guy sold it for 700. I want a refund. And so it's opposite. Here it's like, we don't want to inform the assessor what our value is, because we're paying less than what is actually worth it when the market normalizes. It's flip-flops. So if ever you look, the net building value, the land value is interesting when you compare it to the mainland. Our land value is super high. The mainland land value is like nothing. The improvement value is worth something there versus here. So interesting. You can see the plat map information there. So there's a lot of resources. That's what that looks like. So you can see kind of a view of where that property is in relation to that, that plat. The parcel map can be accessed there, which looks like this. These are the kind of things that I include in a listing presentation anyway, because most people don't for whatever reason. And if you're competing with other agents who don't, this just makes you look, more research and more prepared. If ever you wanted to know how to calculate real estate taxes, that's how you do it. And by the way, Hawaii has the lowest, I think second lowest to Louisiana, second lowest property taxes in the country. It's funny, if I ask my grandma thinks it's the highest. I can't believe how much it is. And I'm like, it's actually really low. California, do you remember what California is? California is enormous.
It was like 2 through the roof. Yeah.
California is 1.25% of the purchase price. And there's something called, they have HOA associations and things too, but there's also something, depending on the neighborhood you're in, called Mello-Roos. Mello-Roos is like another county tax for like toll roads and schools and all kinds of stuff. So can you imagine? 1.25% is a lot of money. What do we have here? DPP information. So if there's any permits and things that can be had and found there. And by the way, this doesn't alleviate, if you're on the buy side, whether you should or shouldn't ask for a permit package, but it helps. It helps getting some of this information that is on public record. So that's what that looks like there. What else? We have access to sketches, any additions that show up there. So it says there like what they got permitted for the railing and so forth. A lot of agents don't even see this or look at this or what have you, but this helps with your negotiations. And quite frankly, on the sell side, it helps because you know what to ask for in terms of how you're going to price things out. Because sometimes people are like, oh, I've done all these improvements. And if nothing's permitted, you still have an issue. Like, how much value can you add to a thing that's not permitted, especially if there's square footage involved? What other information is available to this page? Sales information, current tax bill, if they're delinquent on their current tax, historical tax. So if someone were ever to want to know, has a tax that's gone through the roof? Has it gone up? A lot of people from the mainland ask those kind of questions. You can see the history of the taxes there. How do you order a prelim? That's just an example. Hey, new prelim request. Here's the address. And then you can, as I've mentioned before, do I have it on here? Yeah. Please structure it like this. I want one for 880, 890, and 900. And then please include these fees. And escrow is going to prepare this document, which is the official looking document that you can walk into your listing presentation with. And it shows on the bottom there what the proceeds are, less, obviously you got to, at this early stage, you back out whatever they owe on their mortgage balances if they have one or two mortgages on it. There's an example of the listing presentation that can be found in Command. There's tons of options there. Carrie can also help you. Tons of YouTube videos and tutorials on that. You'd obviously pull comps up. Here's one thing that I absolutely always recommend. I know Shar does this on the Tong team. Super important, especially in a shifting market. Have them, when you show them comps, have them sign the comps. That should be something that they put an initial or signature on, just like they would every other page. And the reason is because things are changing too quickly to their detriment, right? So like if you pull comps up and let's say you arrive at a number of like, hey, it's worth 990, let's sell it for 990. Well, what if the guy across the street sells it for 960 and it just lowers your value? And now they're like, well, you told me I could, yeah, but this is what we looked at. This is the data that we were looking at that time. So have them sign it. It's really, really helpful to kind of revisit. If you guys need help on how to do comps, that's not what this class is for today, but I can absolutely help you. A broker or your BIC can help you, or take a class at the board. The board teaches that stuff, and most of it is free. So these are the documents needed. You need the exclusive listing agreement. You need an MLS property type form. You need the KW standard addendum. You don't need the COVID addendum anymore. I left it in there because that was a requirement. It's not required anymore. You can put it in there. It's not a big deal, but know if you put it in there in compliance, they're going to ask for it. Whatever shows up in your, what section is that? A11. And whatever shows up in A11 is what compliance is going to ask for. We used to make it a requirement for dual agency, that disclosure in there. We don't anymore because of the newly found designated agency. So designated agency will cover both sides of it, that document. So just put the designated agency form in there instead of the dual agency. And then the first Hawaii title ABA. A lot of people will ask this question, and I just want to make sure I answer it, is the designated, well, the seller is like, how do I know it's going to be designated agency or dual agency? How do I know that? Like, why would I sign a disclosure if I don't even know? I just listed the property. The reason is because if you look at the exclusive listing agreement, there's such a small little blurb that talks about dual agency. I don't even think it references designated yet, but it's such a small little blurb. It doesn't give you enough information for a seller to ask you questions or know what their rights are. So we want to make sure that we over disclose. So if there's an issue, that you can address that issue right then and there. That's one for the designated. As far as First Hawaii title, you might go, well, I don't use First Hawaii title, I use First American title, or I use Old Republic or what have you. It's because we own a piece of First Hawaii title, so we have to disclose that we have interest in that company. That's why. So they don't have to use it. We're not requiring anyone to use it, but we still have to disclose that we have ownership in it. So real quick, exclusive listing agreement. Make sure on the very top, kind of upper left area, make sure you have an X next to the brokerage firm is a realtor. For whatever reason, people kind of leave that out. Authorized representative title is for trusts, LLCs, or power of attorneys, POAs. What documents are needed for listing? We kind of went through that. A4, try to make the listing period 12 months. Did I say A4 again? Is it really A5?
No, A4.
The dates, okay. I always try.
No, you're right.
You're consistent.
I am consistent. Thank you, Counselor. One of the things that I always try to go for is 12 months. Things change in a shifting market. So you can go 12 months, but it's the right to terminate. You don't want to make the listing short. I've seen people send me a listing for like 30 days. I'm telling yourself, you're doing yourself a disservice. You might want to do something no less than 60 days, but I wouldn't have the listing 60 days. In other words, the listing itself should be no less than 6 months, if not a year. But the right to cancel can be 60 days or 3 months, or like you've done a couple of them like that, right? Here's a reason why. If you've won them over and they like you, this thing just carries forward. You don't have to rewrite it. But if you have the listing agreement, 30 days or 60 days, you have to redo a whole new listing agreement again. So there's no reason why you want to do that. The listing price has to be on there before a broker signs it. You might not arrive, like when you're preparing things and you're kind of getting things ready, and maybe you're getting them to sign a listing agreement, but it's not going to be ready to go on the MLS for another month or two. And you're like, but I don't know what the price is. That's okay. All those things can be changed. They can be all amended prior to going live, but you got to put something in there, because if it's blank, you can't fully execute something with that pertinent information being blank. A7, get this from the MLS, and it should be formatted as 2.5% of the final sales price, no GET or plus GET. That's for the commission section of it. They've made some changes to it, so it should have on here. Let me see, because I can't see that far. The A7 is a total compensation. So total meaning like yours, our side, the broker, the listing side, as well as what we're paying out, and the co-op side should be separated out so that it's only what we're paying on the other side. So in other words, if you guys have like the Tongs do this a lot, there's a lot of other firms. I used to do this a lot too. If you have a full price that you got, maybe like 6%, it's okay to pay the co-op side 2.5%. And why is that? Why would it be okay to pay the other side 2.5% if you're keeping? Because some agents who don't know, or some newer agents, or some agents that have spent a lot of their career just on the buy side, I've seen them go, that's not fair. We should be splitting it 50-50 or.
Well, I had a question about that, because I thought that, well, this is what Chris, my team lead, told me, that it was like a Keller Williams thing to always do 50-50, whether it's 6% or 5%. But then I saw on the autofill, you know, when we do the autofill, that it has 3 or, you know, 6 and then 2.5. So.
It's not a KW thing. It's every firm and every market has its own standards. We don't want to be, you know, predatory. So in other words, if you got, here's what I heard. If you sent me a file that had 5% and you're paying out 1%, I would have, come on, let's have a conversation. You know, because that's predatory. That's not fair. But at the same time, having an overall 6%, keeping 3.5% and paying out 2.5% is absolutely fair, because on the listing side, there's a lot more work that needs to be done, and you're front loading perhaps some costs or marketing or whatever it is. Whereas the buyer is just writing the contract. So long as it's within reason, and that is absolutely typical, so that's okay. You can also charge 5% and split it 2.5, 2.5. You can charge 5% and split it 3 and 2. You don't want to pay the other side less than 2, because then you're getting into the discount brokerage territory. And I will tell you, people remember, you know what I mean? So you want to be fair, but don't short yourself either. I've also seen people, like, they'll pay 2% and they collect 1%, and I'm like, don't do that. We're not a discount brokerage at all. The protection period, what that simply means is, while you have this property listed, if there's anyone that you've shown the property to that showed some real interest in making an offer, if an offer is being made after you've terminated, whether it's expired or whether either party is terminated, there's a protection that the seller still has to pay your commissions within that time frame. So I always put 90 days, because anything less than that, you're kind of running into a little bit of potential issue. Anything longer than that could be a little bit predatory. So at minimum, do it 90 days. You can go slightly over if you want to, but not much. Don't go less. And then, yeah, we talked about the compensation to the other side. Additional terms, you can have things like seller authorizes delayed MLS entry until blank, until property is renovated, until property is marketed or cleaned out or decluttered, or seller agrees to reimburse listing agent for photos or marketing expenses, like those kind of things. Run it past your BIC and we'll help you with that. Don't be creative. Ask us. You must have the following in there, which I've alluded to before: KW standard, designated first Hawaii title, and anything else that might be applicable, like 1031 exchange or whatever is applicable for that file, include that. Also make sure that you're aware of your seller's needs. Like, I've had this happen a couple of times where a listing agent knew that the seller had to relinquish or move funds around, or it's subject to, they want to make sure that they find the property before they relinquish this one, but none of those showed up in the listing agreement, nor did it show up on this form here. And you can't do that. Like, it has to be like, you have to put the two together, because that's the protection for your seller. So in other words, if the seller wants to sell his property, but he needs to find and be in contract with another property before he lets go of this one, it has to be reflected in A11, and it has to be reflected in A10 using the language and using that specific document, that contingency document, as well as here, subject to. So use use zip forms in order to have some of the pertinent information carry over. So on there, I don't know how savvy some of you guys are with zip forms, but you can pull up some of the information on the buy side. You can put the MLS number, it pulls it up and all fills it. On the list side, you can put the information on the cover side with the parties, and it carries over to all the other pages rather than entering it in every single time. On the MLS prop type form, everything that has a bold and an asterisk is required. You have to have it completed, you have to have it filled out. So I put in here a couple of tips of questions that I get asked all the time. MLS ID is your MLS ID. I don't know why that's so difficult, but people ask that all the time. You won't have an MLS number until you enter the date. So MLS, the number on the corner, you don't need that filled out, oddly enough. I know that it's bold, and I know that's an asterisk, but you wouldn't have that until you put that information in, so you wouldn't have it anyway. You must have the list price in there, as we discussed before. There are a few different property type forms. This one happens to be the single family version, but there is a single family, there's a condo, multifamily. So use the right one. Land recorded, that section, so I'm kind of going where the yellow is, if you want to follow along. Land recorded is either land court, regular, or dual. You can see some of this in Realist sometimes, in the prelim most of the time. If you don't have either at that time, you can always default to go to dual, because dual is the most conservative, because you're saying just in case it might be in both systems. Listing type is always exclusive rights, not exclusive agency. Exclusive agency pays the person that brought the buyer. Exclusive rights, you get paid regardless of who brings the buyer. So that's why that's super, super important. Listing date is a date you're planning to go live on the MLS. This can be changed later or altered in a tenant listing agreement, or changed using a change form or an addendum. We kind of talked about that before. Compensation is the percentage offered to a co-op broker, for example, 2.5%. Dual variable, have you guys ever seen that before? I get that, you haven't, it's right there. It has dual variable, yes or no. It's a disclosure to the cooperating broker if you have a lower commission to you as a listing agent if you procured the buyer. So in other words, if some people do that, where they might take a listing and the seller might say, well, if you bring a buyer, I don't want to pay you 6%. Can I pay you like 4.5% if you're the one that brings the buyer? And you're like, sure, Mr. Seller. If that's the case, and you have that spelled out in the listing agreement, which would be in section A10, then that would be yes. Because the compensation would be variable depending on if you brought that buyer in. Comp subject to is if the compensation could change due to other things like lender approval, court order, all that kind of stuff. Comp method is used only if you selected yes on dual variable. Otherwise, it'd just be a percentage sign. Foreclosure, that little section there, foreclosure, advertised date, auction date, foreclosure number are all related to if the sale happens to be a foreclosure. If it's not, then you leave it blank. Show internet is if the listing will be shown online. So for maximum exposure for your seller, it should be yes, unless the seller is concerned about privacy. Show internet address is if the address should be listed online. And for maximum exposure, it should also be yes too. Some people would say no to that, and I'm telling you that's the wrong thing, because if someone is on Zillow or Redfin or all the other sites that our feed synchronizes to, they're not going to see where it is. They're just going to go like single family home, Mililani. Like, okay, they don't know what to do with that. Like, how are you going to have as much interest on that property if you don't have the address? Lockbox is if you have a lockbox on the property. GET, paid by seller, is pretty self-explanatory. That's either yes or no. That's if you in the listing agreement have agreed to pay the other side's GET. One thing, by the way, to save your client some money, the seller some money, is you can put on there, like I would go in there kind of pre-formatted 6% seller to pay GE. And as we're discussing and as we're negotiating, one of the first things I negotiate is, well, you know what, let's lower it so you only pay the list side GE and you don't have to pay the buy side GE. And then if I have to go down even further, then I kind of go from there. So it kind of gives you a little bit more wiggle room. Listing service is always full service versus, I think it's online only. And what's the other one? Partial or something. But we only do full service. Lockbox serial number, that's, by the way, is that service still there? Mm-hmm. It's across the board now, right? Yep. So who's using like an old school lockbox? So, I can't believe it. Did you know that?
I do both.
Yes, you do.
So Robert and Molly.
I do both though.
You mean at the same time, or you just mix it up?
Yeah, because what happens is inevitably some agent doesn't know how to use a center lock box, so I have a combination box there too.
So Sentry Lock, if you're just comparing the two, is super secure. You have to be an agent in good standing with the board and your dues on time and all those other kind of things. You can also have control of it on the list side where you can shut it off. Like you can turn it off so no one can access it. It is a really good system, and it was, I cannot believe that I own so many of these things. I should have sold it at the time, but nonetheless, it's super expensive to buy, but MLS has a deal now where you don't have to buy them. You can use them per listing. So you don't have to buy them, but you should, if you can, just use it. And how do they do that, Karen?
When you're entering the listing in that section, it says lockbox, and it says yes, no, and it says request one. So when you select request one, High Central, as they process your thing, they'll say, hey, great, here's your serial number, and go see Gary at the market center for pickup. Absolutely free. Return it. We've got a bunch. We've got a lot of people using it right now. Super easy. Once it sells, they say, hey, don't forget to return it to the office.
Yeah. So I would recommend, if you're, besides doing the redundancy that Robert's doing, if you're using only like the dial version of that, trust me, those things can be hacked and broken into and what have you. So do yourself a favor, use the Sentry Lock one, it's free. On the syndication portion of it, that's what I was saying. Show internet should be yes, address should be yes. Now this portion here, allow comments and allow AVM. AVM stands for automated value method. I would recommend those should be no. And here's why, because when it syndicates to another platform, what you don't want on comments, allowing comments, is someone to go, oh, this property sucks, this area is bad, don't buy here, or whatever. You don't need that. That doesn't help your listing at all. And the AVM is an automated value method. As you guys know, like a Zestimate, how accurate is a Zestimate? You don't need that to throw you off. If you have it listed at 800 and Zillow or Redfin or whatever it is saying it's worth 650, you don't need to fight that. You'd rather kind of deal with that yourself. So yes, yes, no, no is what that should be on the syndication portion. Street number is literally just the numeric portion only. Then direction prefix is either N for north, S for south, so forth. The street name is just that. Suffix is place, street, boulevard. Do not put the entire address in all the lines. I get that all the time. People send that over and the entire address is on there. Guys, we don't put schools in this entire section there, none of them, because it's a liability. So leave that blank. Most of this is self-explanatory. As I mentioned before, don't copy from a previous listing. Look it up on your own. If you're able to get a breakdown of the fees, the maintenance association, et cetera, then break that down as applicable here. If not, if you can't break it down, because some of them aren't, some of them is like $500 and it's a combination of a special assessment, association, management fees or whatever, but it's 500. If that's all you know, just put the 500 total. You don't have to break it down if you don't have that breakdown. Home exemption, as we kind of alluded to in the previous slides, can be found in the Honolulu tax assessor's information. It is broken down there too. So it'll give you what the assessment is and how to look that up, what the exemption is if one is applicable. Exemption is for owner-occupied property. So there wouldn't be an exemption on a condo-tel. There wouldn't be an exemption on an investment property. But also if there's another thing that if the seller, if you're competing with maybe the agent that sold him the property, and he's interviewing a couple different agents, one thing that I've always used too is I've looked to see if there's a property exemption. If it's 0 and they've lived in that property, I'll always point out, like, hey, by the way, did your agent, no, he didn't give you the exemption form because you could have saved some money on your property. That's okay. That's not a big deal. But you know, we could have saved you some money nonetheless. And it helps give you a little bit of an edge because you're looking at the things that obviously the other agent didn't even look at to begin with. On the flip side of that, if you're helping a buyer, make sure you give them an exemption form to help them save some money on their property taxes. If the property is a leasehold, make sure that you have all the necessary leasehold information before entering it on the MLS. And the reason is there's so many things that are on there that you absolutely need. To leave it blank just to get the listing, just to go live on the MLS, is you're doing yourself and you're doing the seller a disservice. So on a leasehold property, there could be a fee that could be available. And if so, you want to put that on there. It could be the lease expiration could be coming up. There could be a step up. There could be so many different things on there that are going to be relevant to what the true value of the property is. I mean, put it this way: if the lease expiration expires in 2 years versus 30 years, the value of that leasehold is 2 entirely different things. That's on either side of the spectrum. By the way, guys, just so you know, some people have asked me this before too. Can I get a loan on leasehold? And the answer is, if it's less than 35 years, 37 years roughly, if it's less than that, the answer is yes, you can, but it's not conventional, it's not traditional financing. So it's probably going to be portfolio, private money, hard money. I say 30 to 35 to 37 is because you can get a conventional loan, a VA loan, an FHA loan even, so long as there's between 5 and 7 years beyond the expiration of that loan term for when that lease expires. So you actually could get a 30-year fixed loan on a 37-year term on a leasehold. So that does exist. Public remarks are important. Make sure not to inadvertently, well, obviously don't exaggerate, don't say any untruths, but a lot of people inadvertently violate fair housing. So an example of violating fair housing would be something like, if it's, a property that's in sea country, you can't say, close walk to the beach. I know it sounds simple. You can't say that. You can't say walk. You can't say family. You can't allude to great home for a new family. You can't, like, all those things are unfortunately no-nos. You can instead say close proximity to the beach, that kind of thing, but you want to be very general and not specific to a demographic. Otherwise it's a violation. Agent remarks are only seen by members of the MLS, which is agents, appraisers, and so forth. So if it's agent to agent instructions or information, this is where you'd want to put that on. So for example, please do not call agent for showing requests, instead use showing time, or please include short sale addendum, or please include KW standard addendum. By the way, the other thing that we will often do as well is, if you have an SRPDS already complete, if you have condo docs already, if you have the sign, which you already would have a signed as is addendum, maybe a KW standard addendum, whatever it is, upload that into the MLS supplements. Make it easy for yourself. I spoke to an agent once and I said, when I get the SRPDS and condo docs, and even if I have a survey ahead of time, I'll put all that information into the supplements. And they literally said, well, why would you do that? Because someone might not make an offer. And I said, if someone's not going to make an offer, I don't want them to make an offer. The last thing I would want is for them to make an offer and I send them this information and now they cancel as a result of that. And now I went from active to an escrow back to active again. Because now you got to explain to the public what just happened. That's the call you're going to get. Yeah, I noticed it was active and then an escrow, now it's active again. What's wrong with the property? And now I stigmatize the value of the property potentially. So anything that you know about the property, disclose. Put it all in the supplements page if you have it. Special conditions is pretty self-explanatory. If it's subject to and so forth. Terms acceptable should be things like cash, other, FHA, USDA, VA. If it's one of those government loans or govies, as we would call them, make sure that the building qualifies for that, or the condition qualifies for it. Because some people will put, I've seen this before, like on a property that barely has any, like the windows are boarded up, there's no appliances, it's like squatters have lived there, and they're like VA, USDA, FHA. I'm like, that's not true at all. So when you run your searches on the buy side, make sure that don't just send your client the entire list that pops up if you're doing a search by VA, because it may not qualify. It's garbage in, garbage out. So on the list side, if you're putting those things on there, make sure it in fact does qualify for that type of financing. Possession should always be at closing. Disclosures, property disclosure statement at a minimum is what you're going to put in there. Style should be self-explanatory. This information you get from OIA information, you can get it from Realist. Stories is self-explanatory, how many stories the property is. Property condition, this one is kind of subjective. Use your best judgment, be conservative, don't embellish. But also know too, that if you put something that's fair or less, you could also prohibit financing. It's a slippery slope. So if you get into a property and you're like, yeah, this is kind of rough, if you talk to me, talk to a broker, I can kind of help guide you through that, because you want to put what's real, but also you go into that category, you might not be able to get out of it in terms of the appraisal for the buyer, whoever that buyer might be. Lot description is pretty self-explanatory. Amenities, self-explanatory. Construction, interior, exterior, that could all be found on Realist. Realist has a ton of information. Roofing is self-explanatory. Floor covering. View is subjective. Be very careful of peekaboo views. I've seen people go, oh, beautiful ocean view, and you're like, you kind of got to do one of those moves to find it, but be realistic on that. Topography is self-explanatory. Location, roads. I'm kind of going through this because a lot of people ask questions or leave it blank. But also, by the way, too, there are the R's in there in parentheses mean that it's required. So you can't skip over that when you get to the MLS section anyway. Easements is pretty self-explanatory. They'll show up on the title report as well. Security, utilities available is what the seller may have or know is available in that area. Other monthly fees are self-explanatory. Inclusions rather, are things that are going to be fixtures that are transferring with the property. Commonly, it's, you know, washer and dryer, for instance. There are times where it might be a military family that's taking washer, dryer, refrigerator. And those are the times that you're going to have the conversation of what the market norm is too. Because they might want to do that, and that's fine. It's their right to do that. But that also might take a little bit longer to sell, because if it's an Ocean Point area, which is heavy military, and they're taking a washer, dryer, and fridge, and another military family is coming in without a washer, dryer, fridge, it might be a little bit of an issue. I've had people pass on a property just because of that. I'm like, really? Everything else makes sense, but the washer and dryer. So it's really important to stay with what the market norm is. But that's what the exclusion is what is not being conveyed in the property. And make sure you make that clear. I would put it not only here, but if there's something like a fridge or whatever it is, make sure you put it on the agent remarks too. Pool self-explanatory, so is occupancy. Showing is what kind of notice the buyer needs in order to show the property. So if the property is tenant occupied, you have to make sure you don't step on inadvertently agent landlord laws. So it's immediate 48 hours regardless. You can put vacant or smart card, show and go, or 8 hours notice or what have you. Setbacks are self-explanatory. If you don't know the answer to that, then just put on record. This one we don't use. Yay, we don't have to fill that out. So we went over property type form, KW standard addendum is pretty self-explanatory. First white title we talked about, COVID addendum we no longer need. Designated agency replaces dual agency.
Question in the chat is if the slides will be available for the shots.
These, how many slides are there? Like 90? I don't know. The answer is yes. Good luck. So if you want to know more about editing listings and what have you on the MLS side, guess what? There's a class for that. So that's the next class that's coming up with the board. But here's some things. Are you staging it? One of the things I kind of got big on right before COVID took place, but it's actually very, very convenient. It's super cost effective, and it looks better, is potentially virtual staging. It's not a be all end all. As an agent, think of yourself like as a doctor. You got to kind of figure out what the situation is and apply whatever prescription is necessary for that situation. But know that the regular type of staging that you did in the past, whether you hired a company, and some companies when you hire them, they would cost anywhere from, on the low end, $500, on the high end, $1,500, usually per month until it's sold, or sometimes it's a flat fee, but it's expensive. That adds to your cost. Virtual staging, you can stage, I think it's $100 a photo. So you can stage like 3 or 4 rooms for $300 or $400, and there's nothing to destage. How great is that? And it actually does look better because it's a full staging versus what's the famous realtor staging? We go to Marshall's or Ross, we get the blow up bed, a couple of boxes that were, you know what I mean? It's like that kind of thing. If the virtual staging looks way better. When you do that though, make sure that there's a question, yes or no question. Are the photos enhanced? And the answer would be yes if you've done virtual staging. What I typically do is if you're doing virtual staging, I'll put the photo of it staged with the photo of it not staged back to back, just so that when they see it, they can see that what it looks like before and after, so there's no funny business. When our photos being taken, are you going to do a 3D tour? These are questions that you got to ask yourself when you're doing a listing. Drone photos are really, really important. A lot of people want to know where the home sits relative to the land, the view, and so forth. Are you doing videos like walkthroughs and tours? Whatever you do in terms of that, don't use your phone. Hire a professional. We're professionals. Hire a professional. I can't tell you how many, I still see it, unfortunately not from KW, but I still see it on the MLS. I'm looking through it. I see the agent in the mirror.
Yeah.
Like, you know, unbelievable. Like you're a professional. Have a professional do all that stuff. What's your marketing plan? Are you doing coming soon? How many of you guys do coming soon? Coming soon is great. Coming soon is only for 30 days. You can only do it for 30 days. You can't renew it. The way that they structure, I was actually on the coming soon subcommittee when they created it. You can only do it once per property per brokerage. So like if you decided to cancel the listing and then took it again a year later, you already kind of do that with that same property, with that same brokerage, you've already used it. So I want to say use it wisely, although it's not that big a deal. Coming soon is very flexible on the data that you can have or put in. So for our purposes with KW and our own standards and policies, you got to have the entire listing agreement completed and filled out, all of it. Like we talked about, price and listing timeframes and all that kind of stuff should be filled out. But if you're unsure, and one of the great things about coming soon is if you're unsure about price, especially in a shifting market, and let's say that you're talking to a seller and the seller goes, God, I really want to sell it for $950, and there's nothing in that neighborhood that is sold for $950, nothing. Not even in the seller's market 2 years ago. And you're trying to get that listing and you kind of say, you know what, how about we try it out on the coming soon side? And if we don't get any bites, can we sit down and reconsider and maybe listing it at $899 or whatever the price is. Coming soon is great for that because you can have a whole strategy on pricing it out at $949 or $950 or whatever that is, and monitor how much interaction. And now keep in mind, it's not going to the public, it's only going to agents. But you can monitor how much interaction and dialogue or inquiries that you're getting from other agents to determine whether you should in fact roll it out as an active listing at that same price, or you gotta lower the price. Are you going to be doing open houses? You can do social media. That's kind of a must. I know some people are like, I'm not really big on social media or what have you, but it's kind of a no-brainer. With KW2, Carrie, I think it takes me, I don't know on average with most people, it takes me literally like 3 minutes to create an ad in Facebook using command, like literally 3 minutes. And you can spend as little as like, I think $20 or $30. Super easy. It creates a lot of exposure. I'll show you what that looks like because I have a slide in there that how you can do that. Are you doing circle prospecting? Your SOI is your sphere of influence. So one of the easiest things to do, or escrow e-blast too, one of the easiest things to do is know what your marketing plan is going to be. So if you're a brand new agent or you don't do listings, these are the things that you should be doing, but these are also the things that you should be telling your seller that you will be doing. Because sellers, clients, they literally think that real estate agents sit on the beach all day long, I swear to God. They think we don't do anything at all. And there's a lot of work that goes behind selling their property. So tell them, make sure that they know what your value is. So at the listing presentation, these are the things that you should be discussing. And I'll show you some slides on what you can show them too. So you've uploaded everything. We're going to talk about a couple different things too, but have you guys heard of, besides Steph, have you guys heard of a hit counter? No? Who uses it? Have you heard of reverse prospecting? Anyone use it? These are tools that are built into our MLS, and they're built in for a reason. Like you don't pay anything extra for them, but they're super, super helpful. So again, we were talking about the analogy before, bad agents in a good market. You can put a sign out front, you can put it on the MLS, and the thing's going to sell itself. That's not what you're going to be doing going forward. I promise you that. You've got to use some of these tools. So you should know it now. Before, I want to say a few years ago, I remember I used to do reverse prospecting quite a bit on properties that would be stagnant. So I had a system. If the property didn't have a showing request in the first 10 days, I'd immediately look at, like I had a system. On the 11th day, I would look at reverse prospecting. Then I would look at comps to see if anything popped up that's causing my property to be stale and stagnant. But in the reverse prospecting, I cannot tell you how many times I've sold the property because I saw the agent pop up and I asked them, hey, I have great news. You have a client that loved my property. I'm going to send you the link right now. Click on it. And I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it's super easy to show. In fact, I'm doing an open house. Send your client over. What's your client's name? I'll keep an eye out for. Like I'm literally trying to sell the property to the agent. And I can tell you that has literally worked. They're like, oh, okay. Because everyone wants to make a sale. And I guarantee these other agents are not looking at their own reports. So you're telling them, hey, I got one of your clients that's ready to, potentially buy. Take a look. Here's the link, and you send it. And all that can be done within MLS. Do e-blast with escrow. Are you guys doing that? That should be automatic. That doesn't cost you anything. And by the way, price reductions, open houses, new listings coming soon. Everything is an event. Like, so just don't do it just one time. Like you should be at minimum sending out 4 or 5 different types of e-blasts. But why would you do that? It's exposure. But you're also, and I'll show you this, you're going to send out these weekly reports that I would often do. So I can send you a template on how to do that. But those weekly reports are ways that you're going to secure a listing because you're showing your value. You're not just walking in to a listing presentation like, hey, my name is Chad and I'm absolutely the best and you should hire me because I wear a lot of suits and vests. Like that's a lot of agents just talk about themselves. Instead, what you're doing is here's my value proposition. Here's how I'm going to work my butt off for you. And here's what I do for all my clients. And you're showing them everything. And so this is what some of that stuff looks like. So here's a hit counter. If you guys have never seen this before, you log on to MLS. It's my matrix, my listings. And then when you do that drop down, if you see that where I have circled, you're going to do that drop down and select. You're going to select hit counters. I can see the firm's hit counters is why that shows up. But everything to the side of the date, the stat date, is super, super helpful information. Super helpful information because right now you put a listing on the MLS and this is what we do. All of us, without this kind of tool or data and without the phone ringing, we have nothing. We have no measurables to figure out. Did I price it right? Do people love it? Do people hate it? Like, how do you know? This is how you know. And here's the beauty of, have you guys ever seen some of the other sites like Zillow, Redfin, or whatever, how they have their kind of similar type of hit counter? Have you guys seen that before? Here's a difference in case anyone brings it up to you or a client. Like, yeah, I saw on Zillow, my other agent showed me that my property was viewed 25,000 times. Because that's the number that comes up because it's Zillow, right? Yeah, but here's the difference, Mr. Buyer or seller, is Zillow is a website that appeals, I mean, there's people that are in China or third world countries that are just dialing in and looking at this. That doesn't mean anything. That's not a buyer. That doesn't mean anything. They just landed on this page, landed on your property. These are people that are likely qualified to buy because they're already working with a real estate agent. The only reason why they're showing up in here is because they've already spoken to a real estate agent who has qualified what they're looking for in terms of their wants and needs and set up a custom search. So I would take that 25,000 and throw it out the window. I'd rather talk about the 600 or 300 or 400, whatever that number shows up in here, because these are the actual, these are the people that are going to buy, not the one of the 25,000. It's a huge difference in terms of validity of that data. So on this side, if you notice here, it says client portals. I'm going to go on the top one, Makakilo Drive. So the client portals, that one says 394. So the auto email, if you ever set up on the buy side, someone an auto search for someone, it shows up that way. That's how many portals, client portals it fell into. The client views is self-explanatory. Of the 394, 132 viewed it and clicked on that property. Of the ones that viewed it, clicked on the property, there's 4 of them that are client favorites. That's huge. Because if you're trying to sell the property in a shifting market and you don't have any offers and you're been sitting on this for 20 days, that's 4 potential people. Like if you're going, how do I sell this property? First of all, reverse prospect and get in touch with the agents who represent those 4 people. Like those are potential buyers. On the auto email, you guys know, like you click on a little heart sign or a little, what is the other one? Like a light bulb. That's what those 2 things are. Possibilities are the light bulb. Favorites are the heart. So clients are engaging. That's what that means. That's a good thing. Auto emails is all the auto emails that's included, and then it breaks it down per day. Agent published means that the agent searched for it and shot it out to that specific client, which is also important. And agent rejected means that the agent set it up as a concierge service. So an auto email goes to the agent first, and the agent looked at it and said, nah, I don't like this property. And the client didn't even get it. So although it fell into their portal, they never saw it because the agent rejected it. Now, should you be bummed out or sad about that? No, but if there's a lot of rejections, like this is all data that should help move you to making a decision. Like, hey, I priced it well, or there's something wrong with my photos, or if you priced it super, like I've done this before too, you priced it real well, super competitive, but no views, no likes, and then you realize, oh shoot, I have the photos out of order, or my photos aren't showing up. There's like, that should be data to drive you to do something, or change the photos. Maybe change the order of the photos. That can help drive that number up and down too. Here's another thing that's really helpful about this, is if ever you're having a conversation with someone about a potential price reduction, this is the metrics on how you can monitor that, right? So like on the top one, we have it listed at $975. If I went to the seller and said, hey, listen, Mr. Seller, we've had this listed now for 35 days. We've only had a couple of showings. We don't have any offers at all. We're priced too high. We got to lower the price. And I know that there's 4 favorites. I've already reached out to them. I've already contacted all the listing agents that show up in the reverse prospecting. We have no buyers. We need the views and the client portals to go up. So we got to lower the price. And then you have that conversation. And you might go, let's lower the price by 50,000. And he might go, let's lower the price by 5. That's usually the conversation, right? Let's lower by 50. He's like, how about 5? And you kind of settle somewhere in between. Well, let's say you lower from 975 to 960. What you should be doing is taking a snapshot of this in time right now at 975. And then when it goes to 960, that you got to monitor that number. Because if that number went from 394 to 395, you're not in the right bracket. You're too high still. But lowering it from 975 to 960, if it went from 394 to 600, just wait. Just stop and wait, because you're going to get more showings, you're going to get more calls, you're going to get more inquiries. You need to remarket it, just as I mentioned before, by doing another e-blast, another social media post, because now you're in the right, you've increased the engagement and the viewers by a ton, in that case by double. So that's how that you can use that to your benefit. And then on the bottom there, I can't do this because I'm the broker, but I don't have access to it like you would, but to get to the reverse prospecting side, you would check on the box and then you would click on reverse prospecting and it would pull up that list, and it shows everyone that looked at the property as well as anyone who liked it and loved it as far as the agent. And then you can create that auto email automatically through MLS, which is really helpful. Guys, this is the report that, that I created, that I used myself, which is a seller report. Okay, so the seller report should be a week, kind of a week-long progress report. And it says everything that you're doing with the property. So it could have a picture of the property itself, prepared by you, and then the dates that it's prepared, the address, and so forth. Anything that goes on with the property should be listed there. That's a listing date. That's the current price that you have it at. Here's all the feedback, because feedback is, there's nothing wrong with feedback, especially if you ever, I'm sure experienced agents have had this before too, is you have a listing that isn't the greatest, but I swear to God, that seller thinks it's the best thing ever. And there's a funny smell, but you just can't bring it. You can't bring it to the attention of the seller that his dog smells funny and he's leaving a funny scent all over the place, or there's stains on the carpet or whatever the thing is. I guarantee you it's going to show up here, and you want it to show up there because those are things that you can address. I mean, if you get feedback and no offers and you have tons of showings and all the feedback says the same thing, price too high, then you can go in there with the data. Or all the feedback says carpet smells funny. If you have 10 people that have seen the property, of which 8 of them said the carpet smells funny, then you can go to seller and go, listen, I don't know. I thought it was fine too. I don't know. But listen, 8 people said the carpet smells funny. Maybe we should probably change the carpet. What do you think? Like you can use that data for your benefit. That's all the feedback report. This one was a showing report. So you can tell them how many times the property's been shown. This is the feedback report. If the feedback is blank, call the agent and get the feedback, and you can fill it in manually and still print it out on this report. Here's the MLS updates. So that hit counter that I mentioned before, I'd pre-complete that in here. So I show them what the MLS listing looks like from the broker side, and then I pre-complete all this stuff here. Because now I'm showing them, you're showing them what your value is and what you do. Because if they're thinking that you're on the beach drinking margaritas or whatever you're doing, but you're actually doing stuff behind the scenes. Remember I told you about Facebook ads? I actually would do a snapshot of the Facebook ad so I can show them I'm also spending money marketing your ad. Now, in reality, you're also looking for other clients, but they don't know that. They're looking off of, hey, look at, oh, my photo looks so great. God, I can't believe that's my view. That's so amazing. And then what it shows on the Facebook side of it is how many impressions there were, how many clicks there were, how many leads were generated. So then now you can say, I did reverse prospecting. There's some people that loved it, liked it. There's some leads that came through of potential buyers. I'm in touch with all of them. I'm trying to, you're showing them that you're working for them. But this report is an example that I would also bring to the listing presentation too, because it shows all the things that you plan on doing to help them. So remember those e-blasts that don't cost you, well, some of them don't cost you anything depending on how you do it, but you can do an e-campaign as well. And you can, they can monitor how many people clicked on it, how many people opened it, who replied to it. So you can track all those things too. And in reality, how many clicked on it or whatever, that's really going to real estate agents. But again, you're showing your worth, right? It's still exposure, is still exposure. And that's what you're trying to show the client. So that's the listing report. If you want a template on that, I'll send it to you. Just email me. Moving on to something else I'm going to tell you the genesis of this is when I was I've been doing it for 22 years. In the last major shifting market in 08, I was in Southern California. I had probably around 40 something listings at one time. And then the market crashed and I was sitting on 40 something listings with all of my sellers super upset with me, all of them threatening to fire me, all of them like, you know, why can't you sell my home? I'm going to go with someone else and all this, right? I got fired from one client and I was going down on this one street to go pick up my sign. And I remember pulling up on the street and I saw, like, you know, like it was literally like a movie where, like, you know how things in the movie kind of bend, like, oh. I just looked down the street and I saw a sign. It seemed like on every single property all the way down this large street, like every home had a sign on it. And I'm like, of course I can't sell this guy's house. Like everyone's selling their home. Like every neighbor, everyone on the street, everyone's trying to leave the Southern California. And then I started going, you know what? What if I have like neon lights on the sign? Or what if I have like smoke and fireworks? I'm trying to figure out silly ways to draw attention to my listing and how to my listing stand out from others. And I had just sold some of my cars and I was at a dealership previous to that. And I thought, you know what? You know how a dealership has like a certified used car versus just a used car? And they could be close in price. The certified used car is a little bit more, but what you get for that is you get the 180-point inspection, you get the extra warranty, you get all the extra fluff with this, and you can buy it with confidence versus that's a used car. I don't know if that thing might break down the moment I get to the stoplight. I don't know about this one. But this one, it's okay because I have the warranty. I got, you know, all these other things, right? So I at that time, I created this thing called a certified home. So in this case, it'd be a Keller certified home. And when I applied this marketing method, not only did I get more listings, I sold all the listings that I had because my properties all stood out from the competition. So the reason why I bring it up now, even though I've had it before, is because it's determined on what the market needs are. The market, as hot as it was, you don't need that. Like, you don't need anything like that because the home sells so quickly. But if you have a property that's stagnant, as rates go up and all these other kind of things, you need to be creative. So what is a Keller certified home? First of all, we have all the riders for it. So the thing that you see on the top and the bottom, we already have that. That's already printed out. That's already in the office. So if you need that, please ask and let me know. But also when you're going to a listing presentation, you don't use this every single time, but you should talk about it every single time and use it when it's appropriate to use it. Because you might have a property that might fly off the shelf and you don't need to do this at all. But you might have one that's a little tricky and this might help. So what does that mean? We have arrangements with appraisers that will charge about $300 to $350 for an appraisal. It doesn't mean that the buyer doesn't need an appraisal. You're just trying to get a short version of an appraisal so you can see what the value is. Pre-listing inspection. So you're going to talk the seller into paying for some of these things up front, but the pre-listing inspection is about another $400. But what that also ensures, it's a protection for them because you add it to the SRPDS, right? In addition, the 12-month warranty. So you're providing the buyer with the warranty. And so the kind of the pitch and the script on that is, hey seller, you know, a lot of times, especially in a shifting market, a buyer is going to ask for repairs or credits. Sometimes, depending on the condition of your property, sometimes to the tune of thousands of dollars. But here's what we're going to do instead. Not only are we going to give them a pre-listing inspection so they know everything that might be wrong with the property, we're also going to get them a warranty. So if there's anything wrong with it, they can handle it on their own. And that warranty will only cost you a few $100s and save you potentially a few $1,000s because you're not going to have to deal with the credits, the negotiations, the repairs, and so forth. So that's the script on how to do that. You're going to include the SRPDS. If applicable, you're going to include all the condo and association documents. If applicable, you'll include the survey because you need those kind of things anyway. And here's a satisfaction program. You're also going to tell the buyer, who's not your buyer, by the way, because you're dealing with a seller, right? You're going to tell the buyer, by the way, if you're not completely satisfied with this home within 12 months, I'll list it for free. Hold on, make sure this thing's on. So if you're not completely satisfied with the property in 12 months, I'll list it for free. And you're not saying that you're paying for the buyer's commission, the buyer's agent's commission. You're not charging them on the listing side. So is that good or bad? That's a good thing. In that, I mean, you want someone to be satisfied, but if they're not, you now get a new listing. You now get a new listing with an opportunity to market it and an opportunity to have a 60-day billboard and an opportunity to go and hopefully find 3 or 4 more clients as a result of that. And you also get the opportunity to go find another buyer. It's still a win. I mean, it's just your effort and time, and the money that you would have spent in doing that is probably what, photos, maybe virtual staging, maybe some ads if you needed to. But I would take the risk of doing that all day long. And by the way, I've done that for years. I've never had to do that once, but I have gotten the clients as a result of that. And I've also gotten the buy side because they're like, my agent, I'm calling you out because my agent, like, you know, like everyone, that's an interesting thing. And prior to the pandemic, I want to say maybe the 3rd quarter of 2019, I did this a couple times. One of which was in Sea Country because the market was already shifting. Prior to the pandemic, the market was actually shifting. I did that and we had the highest sale in Sea Country. And people were coming and taking photos of it. And I got a few more sellers as a result of it because the sellers in the neighborhood was like, my agent doesn't do anything like this. This is crazy. So it's a great marketing tool. The last part about it too is, and Steph and I were just talking about this earlier, is with rates rising, that's something that we can't control, right? Interest rates are rising, buyers are being priced out. It's a little bit of an affordability issue and qualification issue. So what if, let's say today's rate is 6%. What if you said, you know, buy now and we can get you a rate of 5%? And just as an example. And what you're doing is you're just telling the seller, again, this is if the seller wants to go that route, because some of these things are prepaying for. But to be able to move their property quickly and for the highest dollar and get the most attention and exposure, that's absolutely it. All you're doing is you're providing a credit. But think about how one sounds versus the other. One sounds is on the MLS, you can just go seller to provide 1% credit to buyer. Or you can say, with this purchase, if qualified, you know, interest rate of around 5% when rates today are at 6 or whatever the thing is. I guarantee you more people are going to see that because now it's an affordability issue. Because now they're going, ooh, I can't qualify. I thought I could qualify for a $900,000 home, but now I definitely can if I'm going to get a lower rate. And the lower rate is not going to cost me, the buyer, anything to do. It's going to cost the seller. It's a different sell. So that part of it you don't have to do, but I'm just kind of throwing that in there that might be a good idea to consider, especially with rising interest rates. Any questions on the Keller certified home? I have paperwork on it. I have all that kind of stuff on it.
Can you say the thing about the rates again more time? I just want to memorize that a little bit.
Is that Howard asking me a question?
Yeah, sorry.
Howard, your name says Anna on it. That completely threw me off.
Sometimes we merge.
Okay, Anna, I'll answer the question. So what I was saying was in that slide or that example, with interest rates rising, right? So if rates are and by the way, you want to put appropriate disclaimers on it. So if rates roughly are at 6%, you kind of want to do the asterisk, you know, buy this home and we can get you a rate of 5%. The asterisk part of it is if you qualify with the necessary down payment. With the,
yeah, or can you, another way would be maybe to say sellers willing to pay a point.
So this is what, the answer is yes, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I'm talking about using the right language to get someone to call. That language is like, oh, okay.
No, I hear you. I just.
And in reality, though,
so much. It's like there's a lot of asterisks on that. But I hear.
Yeah. So this one wouldn't go on a sign, by the way. That one would go on like the MLS or
right.
You know, a mailer or whatever that is. What goes on the sign is what's on the sign. But you're right, Howard. It's what sounds better. What will get somebody to make that phone call? What will move someone? The risk that you run, if you say seller will be paying 1% towards buyer's closing costs, you know what's going to happen more often than not? The buyer's going to negotiate and negotiate for more. That's what they're going to, because they're going to go, if you're going to give 1, then you would give 1.5, or you give 2, or how about, rather than saying that's a different way to approach it. And that's a different way that they'll probably receive it too.
Okay.
Moving on to this, TMO report is a total market overview report. As the market shifts for both buy side, sell side, this is something that we create from scratch and we send it out to, I think I send it out twice a month. Is that right? Twice a month? This is the same information that's on the MLS, but broken down in brackets. And why that's important is if you look at this, I know it's hard to see on the screen, but if you look at it, it breaks it down in increments of like $25,000 or $50,000 increments. And so if you're pricing out a home and there's a lot of inventory in a very tight bracket, you might, that's a strategy that, wow, there's nothing, I have no competing offers in the bracket right underneath that. So if I price it out just $15,000 less than what the seller wanted to, I now have no competition and everything's flying off the shelf in that bracket, for instance. Likewise, on the buy side, that's how a buyer or an investor can see where good deals might lie, is by looking at where that bracket lies. So we have it broken down condo versus single family versus area and broken down by price point. It also has sales price to list price ratios, average days on market, price reductions, the percentage of deals that are pending and so forth. So kind of, yeah, lastly, pricing strategy or listing strategy that sold a home the last few years is not going to be the same that going forward. So make sure you change your habits. Keller certified home, use it when it's applicable, when it's beneficial. That's a good way to stand out from the competition. Use reverse prospecting to get in contact with other agents. Many agents are lazy. For every price reduction, make an event to remarket. Do an e-blast, more open houses. Use the hit counters, especially to determine the right pricing and engagement. Price reductions can be tackled by tangible metrics, which is what I use all the time. Use the total market overview and change your lens. An open house isn't 3 hours on Sunday from 2 to 5. It's a week-long process to get more listings and potential buyers. So I'm going to stop there to make it easy for us so no one falls asleep driving home. But I also can talk about, if anyone has any questions about SRPDS. The only thing that's really huge that's changed with that is the rising sea level disclosure. It's not another form, it's a checkbox. And if it's applicable, you're gonna wanna go to the website that has it and pull it up and disclose it accordingly. That's really the only thing on the SRPDS that's really changed. But on the slides that I'll send out to everyone, it'll have all of this, and it'll also have all the SRPDS information and slides too. So anyone in person here have questions on Zoom? Did I put anyone to sleep? Is that coffee? I'll share my coffee. No? All right, folks. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you taking the time. Email me if you need any of the, well, I'll email this to the people who registered, but I will also send you, if you want, the format for the weekly report or the TMO if you're not already on the list or whatever it is. So let me know if you need anything, and I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The format for the KW certified, so I can send it over to the sign shop.
Thank you.
I have it already.